Hello, welcome to the Design Lounge, brought to you by the SketchUp Hub, and more specifically, me, Anita Brown. I called the podcast the Design Lounge because I wanted to create a relaxed environment where design professionals could engage in open discussion surrounding topical issues affecting the interior design industry today and hopefully contribute to positive change for the future. So, girls, I am so excited. Like, I'm not going to lie. I've had butterflies. I mean, and that's not just because we're going to be talking about standards, even though I have a 10-year-old walnut kitchen. Okay. So I have a coffee here. If you want to grab a tea or coffee before we start, like, please do that. This is like a cash chat. Okay. Nadia is like, that looks like a whiskey to me. What is that you're drinking? I don't know.
Oh, I wish. It's just water. I've had my coffee hit though, so I'm good.
Water? No. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the Design Lounge, the first ever podcast of the Design Lounge, brought to you by the SketchUp Hub. And I know that we already have some SketchUp Hub students here today, not mentioning any names as to the one who isn't a SketchUp Hub student. Kavia, when I'm joking. So first of all, what I'm going to do is introduce you guys. I have some information about you so that you have a little bit more knowledge about each other. And then obviously we're going to talk about standards in the interior design industry. That is why we're here today. Okay, so first up, we have a lady who's located in London and Surrey. She's an interior designer. She has been working as a designer for 5 years. And she started working as a designer before she graduated, okay? So she has academia behind her. Her specialism is luxury, commercial, and residential interiors. And at the minute, the project that she's working on that's really exciting her is a townhouse in Earl's Court. And she's going to be working on that for quite a few months to possibly this year. And it's going to have a basement spa area and pool. Her pet peeve is over-cluttered spaces and sterile interiors, and that is Kavia. So welcome, Kavia. Next up, we have a Bristol-based interior designer with 6 years experience, mostly working on residential projects for families who are wanting to bed into their grown-up homes. I mean, that's very niche. You know what you're doing, girl. She has a particular interest in period properties and bringing a contemporary interpretation to classic designs. Love the way you've worded that. With regards to an exciting kind of project that she's working on at the minute, it's actually her own house. And that's like a podcast in itself when it comes to interior designers working on their own.
Oh God, yeah.
It's an 1850 4-story house on a hill, which has had an interesting mix of period features being stripped out and cheap fixes to address that. So she's obviously having to backtrack there an awful lot. That sounds really exciting. She has a list of pet peeves that include pictures hung too high, undersized rugs, reluctance of electricians to fit switches and sockets at level, radiators hung too high, overuse of recessed spotlights. I'm guilty of that. Rehanging doors the wrong way unless strictly necessary. I mean, the list goes on. And that's Nadia. So welcome, Nadia. Portia. Oh, I've just said your name. You're supposed to say the name last. We'll edit that out. Our next interior designer is from Suffolk. She's also studying an HND at the British Academy of Interior Design. And I think we'd all be very familiar with the British Academy of Interior Design. It's quite a reputable establishment. She has been undertaking interior design jobs from 2017. And her area of speciality would be unconventional, eclectic design and using color and design to improve well-being. Massive subject at the minute. I mean, that's another podcast on its own. Something exciting that she's working on at the minute are short online courses providing useful information for those wanting to do interior projects on their own homes, hoping to launch in November. Is that still happening?
Yes.
Great. Pet peeve, pictures hung too high on the wall. I mean, there's like a little bit of crossover there. That must be a popular one. Although I think it is, because there's actually a lot of blog posts and stuff about that, isn't there? About hanging pictures. It's like a skill in itself.
Yeah.
So
common,
welcome to all of you. Very impressive information there regarding your backgrounds, your knowledge, your skills. And as I said, we're going to be talking about standards in the interior design industry today. If I keep looking down, it's because I have notes. There's notes in addition to how to pronounce Kivia's name. All right. So
you got it right.
What's up?
You got it right.
I know, but it's the Belfast accent. It's it's terrible. It's just trying to say, like, it's quite a coarse accent. It's quite it's not subtle and it's not soft. Anyway, so standards in the interior design industry with leaning to a decline. I'm not going to lie. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that there's a perception that standards have been on the slide. We're going to discuss what has contributed to that decline, how it is impacting the industry now, and what we can do going forward to try and improve standards. Okay. With regards to kind of areas, maybe just a couple of suggestions as to how we can start that. I've noted a few areas, for example, training, qualifications, big, massive subject on its own again. Industry bodies, what they are or aren't doing to try and support the industry better, especially when it comes to just setting examples. The digital revolution, that's a big subject for me. And when I say the digital revolution, I just mean changes in processes that have had a massive impact on how we work, on how we live, and how that has then impacted interior design. The side hustle culture. I don't have a problem with side hustle. I'm all about the side hustle. I was doing the side hustle before it was known as the side hustle, but there's a pros and cons to that. And how we live, there's a little bit of a crossover with that with regards to the digital revolution, because we seem to be living such fast-paced lives now. Consumers want it and they want it yesterday. I feel that businesses / interior designers are feeling under pressure to deliver, and perhaps that may be causing problems with regards to standards. So I'm going to maybe kick off with the digital revolution side of things for us, just as a starting point, and you can tell me what you think about that. The digital revolution with regards to social media and people feeling under pressure to deliver a certain service a lot quicker. With regards to, especially when e-design and online interior design services became, like, they have been prevalent for quite a few years now, but it does seem that the market is kind of swamped with that at the minute. And from my own perspective, especially being an online business, I have seen how the interior design industry has perhaps compromised and sacrificed certain elements of the service in order to provide that convenient online service. And I'm just wondering how you guys feel about that, or if you agree, if you disagree. Have you witnessed that?
Before I dive in, I'm just going to switch my chair to a more comfortable chair. I didn't think this through.
Can I kick off? I think if we go back a step, I'd say it probably starts before that with TV programs, which predate social media. And that's something I was thinking about. I think when I came into interior design, which wasn't that long ago, it was still seen as a really niche thing to do, both in terms of a career and as a service to avail of. it was quite exclusive, and now it's a lot more accessible, which has benefits. But when you look at sort of the design TV programs, the emphasis that they place to make, enjoyable TV is about, let's try and do everything in a really, really short period of time and for a very, very low budget. So, there's that classic, there's that saying about design that you can have fast, cheap or good, and you can pick two of those things, and, where are you going to compromise? And I think they compromised on most of the time on the quality, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you feel also that the perception of the interior designer's role was also compromised with regards to those kind of shows? I mean, we're talking about changing rooms here and 60-minute makeover and all that kind of stuff. I mean, 60-minute makeover, come on, an hour, please. It takes me an hour. It takes me an hour to decide how to actually display my cushions. It's like, no, it's not right there. No, I need a larger one there, more patterned. That's
absolutely. So if you look at even the ones that I would say the Great Interior Design Challenge, which is very recent, you get people doing things like taking a fruit bowl and turning it into a light fitting. Well, that's not something I'm ever going to do for clients. Or, I think there was an episode where somebody took toy dinosaurs and then put them onto a chest of drawers in a child's room as drawer pulls, and then they all had to come off because they weren't child safe. And they did admittedly go back and recognise that wasn't safe, but the pressure, they meet the sort of so-called client on a Monday, and then by Wednesday they're delivering an entire mood board, all their plans, they've got all their samples. It takes me weeks to get all my samples together. It's not realistic.
I think it's sort of perpetuating sort of really unrealistic standards, isn't it? From the clients watching these shows thinking, oh, okay, that's how it works. And then they're sort of disappointed when you say, well, actually, no, it takes this long, or, we have to go through this first. And, like you say, Anita, I think people are sort of sacrificing quality, cutting corners to kind of meet those expectations, those unrealistic expectations that have been laid out.
And just that sense that the designer does everything, the designer.
Funny enough, the reason I got.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Kiva, go ahead.
That's okay.
No, please continue.
Funny enough, the reason that I wanted to get into interior design initially was because I used to watch all these TV shows growing up, but the reality of it and going to uni and, learning what it actually entails to be an interior designer, I was just like shocked. I was like, I did not realize that so much work went behind it. And there was, so much more than just calling up for someone going, yeah, I want this. So
did anyone else have like an absolute culture shock when they realized they had to do technical drawing?
Oh, God.
see when I studied with the National Design Academy, and when we had to do technical drawing, and this wasn't really, I did the diploma and then moved on to the degree, and I only did the first year of the degree because I realized interior design wasn't for me. But it is for me, but it wasn't as much of a priority because I found 3D visualization and I was like all over that. But when I realized that we had to do the technical drawing and the whole space planning thing and like measuring like distances, and because it was for an office, I was like, I didn't sign up for this. So you're totally right with regards to perception, with regards to the client watching those shows thinking, oh, that's what an interior designer does. But from the interior designer's point of view, someone who thinks that they have the skill to be an interior designer. So for example, when you've got your Instagram bloggers and your influencers, and they're watching shows like that, they're watching that thinking, I could do that.
Oh, I could do that. Yeah.
I think it's a separate issue, but if you, having just said interior designers don't do everything, actually, if you look at the skill set and the personality traits that you need as an interior designer, it's so ridiculously vast that actually there are going to be very, very few people that naturally hit all the boxes. So, you have to be able to think really big and really creatively, and yet just be the most nitpicking, attention to detail, person, and you know, you need to be really good at communicating, and you need to be really good at talking to tradespeople, and you need to be good at, you're probably at some point going to be doing your own photography and your own marketing and developing your own website and networking, and the vast majority of people are going to struggle with one or other of those aspects. And I think there's some people that recognize that and fill in those gaps, or they outsource, or they might just try and ignore that and only, you know, narrow down their focus onto stuff that only takes in the skills that they have. And maybe that's where it goes wrong.
Completely. I completely accept that, for sure. I mean, any business, like even when I went out into business, it's a massive eye opener what's involved, massive. But by the same token, when I've been speaking to interior designers, I'm going to generalize a little here, but just from my experience, they get angry at bloggers. They get angry at influencers, and rightly so, to a point, rightly so. And they're kind of like, who do they think they are, first of all? Because, you know, they have no right to do that, and they're wrong. What they do is wrong. And there is a lot of times where I've seen a lot of advice from bloggers and Instagrammers who have great intention. You know what I'm talking about. There was a discussion in our Facebook group recently about something I'm not going to go into details about.
An incident.
Tilegate, that's all I'm going to say. But, but it's damaging, you know, because they're not, what are they basing those tips and that knowledge on? But by the same token, I would say to interior designers, then take up your space. Don't sit back and say that person's given bad advice, they're representing the industry poorly. That's not what I would do. So take up your space.
See, that's the thing though. Are they representing the industry, or are they in a sort of league of their own in the sense that they are bloggers, we are interior designers, and there's sort of, they do sort of cross over, but they're separate? Because I totally agree. Like, I don't think there should be people out there giving erroneous advice and, you know, poor advice about interiors. But then I feel like they're serving a group of people who are maybe DIYing and things like that. They're not people who are looking to hire interior designers, maybe. I suppose it's still damaging overall, but I don't know if they're sort of directly affecting the industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem I find with it is, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of like bloggers that I follow that I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely amazing. It's the point where they start offering an interior design service.
Yeah,
they don't have the backlog to support it, and, you know, they don't know, you know, about all the regulations, and there's so many rules that we actually need to follow if you think of it, whereas they wouldn't have that knowledge, but they're offering that service as if they
absolutely. I think that's it. I think when it crosses over into them offering a service, then it becomes like more problematic. I think if they're kind of offering like little DIY tips, even if, you know, like you said, there are many bad DIY tips and stuff out there, but I think that's not as problematic as when they kind of like, yeah, come to me and I'm going to offer you a service now.
Yeah.
And they're then, they're in sort of the league of interior designers.
Actually, that is happening quite a lot. So I'm following quite a few, you know, DIYers, homeowners, and they've got beautiful, beautiful houses. And then in the last few weeks, and I think maybe COVID and lockdown has almost exacerbated this, there's this, I've got some exciting news. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've got a new venture underway, but I won't be saying anything until Monday. And, you know, your heart sinks because you don't know what's coming. Know that whenever somebody takes time out from their, you know, life, their normal job, oh, what am I going to do with my life? I know. I'll be an interior designer. And
well, I mean, that's bringing us on to an interesting point as well, because, I mean, to be honest, from my perspective, with regards to the SketchUp Hub, the amount of midlife career changers is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I welcome that and embrace that, because I'm one.
Me too, yeah.
But there has to be a basis of some description, right? So we're kind of moving in here to training and qualifications a wee bit. And I would like to touch on online services, because I do feel online services has impacted quite a bit on interior design. So let's just be mindful of that for a second, so stay kind of focused on the really kind of the things that are having massive impact. So, and the training and qualification thing, sometimes I get defensive about it because I'm not highly trained in what I do. So, at this stage now, I'm training interior designers how to use CAD software, because I consider myself a professional 3D visualizer with a background in interior design. And I did take a diploma, and I did do the first year of the degree of interior design. So I have a foundation, and there are times I feel even that is enough as a starting point, because the things even that I teach, there are no courses. There's no courses exists for the mood boards, for presentation techniques, for the things that I teach with regards to the elevations and the floor plans and cropping things and making it look much more visually impactful. And there are no courses like that. So that's from within. So that's me. And there are loads of people out there in their defense who don't have qualifications, but they have a natural gift. And I mean, the biggest example of that is Kelly Hoppin. She is a massive proponent of no qualifications, worked my off, and I have a natural talent. But then by the same token, is she the exception?
I think that you get an education, and you either get the education formally or you get the education informally.
Yeah.
So for people like Kelly Hoppin, I mean, my feeling is that I have probably learned as much on the job as I have through my course. And a lot of it is through talking to tradespeople and talking to suppliers. If you're somebody, as with Tilegate, where you're not prepared to talk to a tradesperson to explain, to understand what they've done and why they've done it, then you're not educating yourself. If you're someone that's thought through the full implications of what you're doing, you'll have already got to the point where you've realised that, that's not going to work because that corner's not going to meet that corner, or what are we going to do when we get to this doorway? You've thought through all those problems in advance, and you've discussed it with your tradespeople, and you know what the tradespeople's view is from their technical side. And then when your client says to you, oh, so why are we not doing it like this then? You can actually explain it. You don't know say,
why.
Well, because the electrician says so, because that just makes you look like an idiot.
Yeah, I agree with Nadia. I think it's about education, regardless of how you get that education. So yeah, like you said with Tilegate, it sort of seemed like, she was just winging it. There was no education, whether it be formal, whether it be sort of education through experience. It was just not there. And I think that's a huge problem as well in terms of standards declining, is that people just aren't bothering. They think that it just needs to look nice, and that it's just all aesthetics, and like it just it's a matter of opinion, it's subjective, whereas actually it's not. And however you learn to do it properly, whether that be, like Nadia said, formal or by experience, you still need to learn. So
okay, so let's say let's bring that back into the industry, right? So let's say we have an interior designer, a self-titled, untrained interior designer who's learning as she goes, and she's making those mistakes, or he. But we know that those things are happening all the time at the minute. So if someone is continuing to produce a service that is considered or perceived to be substandard, if they continue to do that, then it would suggest that there's a lack of pride, that people just don't care anymore.
There's a lack of integrity.
Yes, that it's just not important anymore.
Yeah.
And I do think that's a big problem at the minute.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think lack of integrity is like a huge problem at the moment, not just in the interior design industry, but in a lot of industries. I think especially creative industries, I think, are really suffering with that. And like you said, it comes down to that sort of like fast sort of element to everything at the moment, that everything is just like now, and everything is just looks, and there's no, I think people do misinterpret design as purely aesthetic. Whereas it's like, no, it's actually so much more than that. It's, you know, it's function, it's all this. And so I think that's where like that lack of integrity is coming in, because it's sort of like, well, this looks nice, so I've done the job, right, tick. Whereas it's like, well, no, actually it doesn't function, or actually that's kind of like not going to be looking that nice in a year's time, or, you know. So I think that people are kind of just dropping off all of those extra elements and layers that come along with interior design, and just focusing on this one tiny section of, well, one section of interior design, which is how it looks. And they think that that's all that needs to happen. And yeah, I think that's really damaging. And I don't really know, like, how do we kind of like stop that from happening? Because
I think that element of it is so rife in e-design services. Cutting corners, trying to get the design out as quickly as possible. The problem with I love e-design. I love online interior design services, literally because of the accessibility and affordability. And Nadia, picking up on what you said earlier about back in the day, interior design was considered exclusive. Like the normal average person, and I consider myself to be representative of a working class, normal average person. You wouldn't even consider even speaking to an interior designer. I mean, back in the day, I had them on such a high pedestal, and I do still to a certain extent, because I do feel they are, you know, they're very gifted individuals for what they can do. And they just know things and can do things that are just out of the normal person's grasp. You know, they just can't do it. Just can't do it. But so back in the day, it was very exclusive, quite pompous. And there was a certain aesthetic that I didn't like see the whole, this is probably going to be controversial here, but back in the day, and you still see interior designers that are more traditional doing it now. We have that hotel look and everything's plumped, and the cushions have karate chops, and I have a problem with that. We can talk about that some other time. Cushions are all karate chopped. They have that Art Deco. There's a very strong Art Deco hotel look, and they're doing this in the living rooms, and there's like the velvety plush carpet, and I'm like, and there's big interior designers, especially London based, with all the neutrals that do this, and I'm like, that's not contemporary interior design, and that's not a contemporary interior designer. That's not relevant. I don't consider that relevant. But I went off on a wee tangent there. Give me a second. Okay. But when it comes to online interior design, they kind of completely, what's the word I'm trying to say? Threw that on its head. It took away the pompous. It took away the exclusive. You know, it just, interior design became much more affordable and accessible. And I'm all for that. Because I want normal average people.
For that, but I think the problem is it's been driven down so low. So because I've got children, and sometimes, you know, the reason why I'm self-employed is because I can scale it up and down according to what's going on in my life. And I've had several friends say to me, oh, well, you know, you could do online services, and there are various sort of, I don't know what the word is, like conglomerate services that designers can sign up to. But you know, the amount that you're charging, to me, it's not enough to reflect the time that goes into a good solution a lot of the time. It's very rare that your first response is the right response or the best response. Coming back to all those sort of quick fixes on Instagram, you know, good solutions take time, and time costs money. You know, we all know that. And if you're able to churn out a room design with all the specifications and the furniture plan and everything else for, you know, £150, I can't put in.
Listen, there's some that are like 99 quid.
Yeah, you can't. You're paying yourself. You're not paying yourself a very high hourly rate, and it sort of doesn't justify.
Okay, so do you think it's possible at all, even if the price had to be increased? Do you think it's possible to provide an online interior design service? This is going to be controversial, Nadia. This is going to be controversial. I mean, we might have to do another podcast about this. Do you think it's possible that you can provide an online interior design service that's still providing value for money and design of a certain standard?
For me personally, I think it's probably a bit of a circuitous answer. I for me, it's really, really, really important for me to get to know my clients really well, because I don't do really similar, like you've just described. You know, all my designs don't look the same. They're very, very they're quite intuitive, I think, responses to the people that live in the house, the age of the house, the environment of the house. It's you know, the way that the owners dress, things like that, that you sort of somehow absorb. And while you're doing all these very technical, practical things, there's some sort of subconscious thing going on as well that's pulling all that together, which I think is harder when you're doing it online, because you don't have as much.
Do you not feel then perhaps the online element, they're kind of more interior stylists as opposed to interior designers? I mean, I don't see too many of them, but I have seen examples. I don't know if I can name them. I probably can't. This is positive feedback, so it's not slander. But I have seen examples of some London-based firms doing online design, and like they're nailing it. They're nailing it. Sure, they are showing after photos, so they're showing the process. There is a little bit of artistic license going on with regards to 3D visual, because they're not. They're faux 3D mood boards, and I've got a problem with that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they're nailing it.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I think, like you said, it's a really broad church of, or maybe like I said, in terms of skills and abilities within interior design, what's going to work for me is not going to work for somebody else. So I would struggle to work like that, I think. That doesn't mean somebody else might really struggle with going and meeting people in the home for whatever reason. You know, they might be living in the middle of nowhere, so that's the way they can access a much wider audience. I'm not dissing it, but the other thing I would say is, and this is maybe something for young designers to consider, what are they actually adding that the client can't do for themselves? To me, I don't think there's any point producing a scheme that is, well, I don't think there's any point producing a scheme where you're just telling someone to shop on the high street with very, very well-known names, with things that actually somebody could just really do themselves. Now, I know there are people that are going to pull things together in a magic way and add their own, magic to it. But I do think there's
that's the thing, though.
Sorry, go ahead, Portia.
No, I think with the e-design services, I think it can't really be compared to like a full scope, like interior design service. I think it is sort of like apples and oranges, isn't it? I think if you're doing an e-design service, you're not going to be offering that full kind of like, turnkey service that you might be offering normally. It is going to be a pared down version of what you already offer. So it's not going to have all of the same sort of bells and whistles that your normal service might have.
It won't. I think with regards to the standards in the interior design industry, just to bring us back to the initial topic, unfortunately, there are always going to be people that are going to cut corners and have a negative impact on that niche of the industry. I mean, we have all seen, even if we just touch on presentation and what they're producing, like we've all seen the really dodgy mood boards, the faux
cut
3D
and paste, like
Well, coming back to education,
that's not a 3D visual, guys. Stop calling it a 3D visual. It's not.
The thing about the education being part of the course, the one thing that I think was particularly useful for that is that you're constantly seeing what other people are doing. And like I said, there's always going to be areas where you are less strong. And it's not about copying other people, but when you're able to see, oh, actually, that person, I'm not so sure that their layout's so good, but wow, I love the way they've presented their actual design. Oh, and they whatever their layout is in their mood board, I kind of like that. I might just kind of think about how I could incorporate that. Or they're so much better at combining colour and pattern than I am. I need to kind of think about that. And if you're not participating, it comes back to this thing about if you're not going to participate in a formal course and get that exposure to other people's way of working, you probably need to force yourself to do it, as your own education, and start looking at what other designers are doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it.
I think that's the problem, but especially when it comes to online, they're feeling, the designers who are doing this are feeling the pressure to get the design done so quickly that they're compromising on other areas of the service. And I'm coming from a presentation point of view because that's what I specialize in. So when I see online interior design services marketing themselves as interior design, they're interior designers, and I see the caliber of the work, they're substandard mood boards. There's been no thought put into it. We've got a couple of images just stuck to a page. There's no visual aesthetics. There's no structure. There's no balance. There's no harmony. They're calling 3D visuals images stuck to a page again, and it's like, so from another perspective, my attitude is no. You're actually undermining then the people who are actually producing 3D visuals and are putting together cohesive and visually aesthetically pleasing mood boards. This is I don't know what this is.
I feel like like the whole online services, it does kind of like open up the gate for people to just like sort of abuse the sort of the industry, doesn't it? Like it sort of opens up anyone to just come along and say, yeah, I'm going to offer an interior design service and it's going to be this, this, and this. And it means that then you have like this massive spectrum of quality. There's not really, it's like the Wild West, isn't it? Like there's no real sort of...
No, I think it does devalue us in a way as well, because I think I've seen a YouTube video recently where like a famous YouTuber asked 5 different interior design services to do a package, and you could see the range in prices was from like £50 to £300, and it does give clients a perspective as well. Well, if I can get that online for £100, why am I going to pay an interior designer so and so to do the same work?
And they're not realizing that what they're paying like £100 for is not going to be the same thing as what they would pay, So it's tricky because people who would not know otherwise are sort of taking that as that's the standard and that's okay, and I should accept that.
As professional interior designers with experience behind you, being out there and dealing with clients and charging proper prices for full design services, have you seen a shift in the client's perception of what they should be paying for your service? Because I want to touch on what the negative impacts that all of this is having, the lower standards, cutting corners. So what I'm trying to say is, do you feel that all of that has contributed to your clients or your target audience having a non-realistic idea of what prices you should be charging?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like I've just obviously set up my business, so I feel like I'm very reasonably priced because I've just started and I don't want to feel like I'm overcharging. But even then with my prices, I'll still have clients going, oh, I think that's a bit much. I've seen it cheaper elsewhere. But I want to show them, it's like, well, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge, I've got the contacts, in industry and everything. And it is a lot of my time, ordering something online doesn't take me 5 minutes. It will take hours, if anything, if I'm having to specify everything, put all the documents together and make sure that the fabric is the correct fabric for the sofa. And I don't think they see that work behind it because we don't really show it as well. I think with a lot of the social media influencers, it's all about the pictures and they're not really showing the work behind it, where it would take literally hours to specify one couch.
Yeah, there's like a general sort of decline in respect for what we do, I think.
I think it's like every industry. If you look at sort of surgery, or I know we're going back hundreds of years, but lawyers, surgeons, general practitioners, all of that kind of thing. I'm not saying we're quite on that level, but every kind of profession has gone through this phase where you end up with everyone flooding into the industry, and then there's a lot of sort of, like you say, sort of Wild West cowboys. Everyone's having a go. And then the regulation comes in and things stabilise. So, we've got regulatory bodies now underway. I wouldn't say they're quite where they need to be as an industry overall. But, architecture's gone through that process. And now, you know, RIBA's recognised as the industry body. You can't call yourself an architect if you do not have registration with RIBA. I'm not sure whether that's where the interior design industry is going to go, but I do think it's kind of like a process that every industry has to get through.
Do you feel, just with regards to regulation there, I have to be honest, I don't know if the end client cares about regulation.
Yeah, I don't.
But I feel
I'm a member of the. I'm sure a lot of people are a member, but I don't think a client has ever asked me about whether I'm a member of a regulatory body. You know, I've got insurance, as every interior designer should do, because we know how much it costs if something goes wrong. The reality is, for the client, I don't think a client's ever asked me if I've got insurance. Yeah. If I mess up and I don't have insurance, I don't think they realise that they will be carrying the cost. I won't be carrying the cost. It's part of your professional standard to have that insurance. And, you know, have your continuous professional development and all those reasons why industry regulation and professional body membership's really good. But like you say, I don't think clients ever.
Yeah, let's touch on the industry bodies, because there is one big massive industry body, the British Institute of Interior Design.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2 of my courses are accredited by the British Institute of Interior Design. I felt that was important for my target audience. But with regards to your target audience, I really, you know, I don't feel they really don't care. They're just interested in, can you give me this end result of this lovely room? Yes, yeah. Right, let's go. Yeah. But what I do want to talk about with you guys is, do you feel that those kind of bodies, I mean, there's 2 main bodies, isn't there? There's the Society of British Interior Design, and then there's the British Interior Design, or the British, no, what is it?
British Institute of Interior Design.
There you go. Do you think they do enough with regards to upholding standards, setting an example, trying to do more to encourage and influence with regards to, you know, respecting the industry? Like, I do feel the whole lack of pride. I do feel there's a lack of pride in people and the output and the process and the level of service that's being provided. Are they doing enough? And do you think they could, you know, what could they do to try and improve on that?
It's a tricky one, because the people that are members are the people that they're accessing, but I guess the people that are members already care about their professional standing and the you know, the quality of the work they're outputting. It's how do the industry bodies reach the people who are not?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a point.
I don't know how much of that's really going on.
I mean, you could say the same about universities when it comes to the qualifications and stuff. I remember when I was doing the interior design qualification, this is a tough one, because there's a lot of times I do feel that the universities and the courses are out of touch a little with regards to the relevant things that the interior designer has to do today to survive. For example, when I see hand sketched renders, I'm like, girl, you're not doing that in the real world. That's just not happening. You know, it's like, do they need to be a bit more shrewd? Do they need to become a little bit more relevant with what's going on? And, you know, try to get that balance between, you know, the theory, the practical, but also, you know, how to survive and what you need to do in order to be, you know.
That's one thing that I feel like British Institute of Interior Design does do quite well. It's like they have quite a good focus on like CPD and sort of like offering those kind of like things to, like you say, people who are already, you know, part of that. But like Nadia was saying, it's how do they access the people who are on the fringes?
Do you think they're visible enough though? Do you think they're visible enough?
No, I don't think so.
I don't.
No.
I think they could do so much more.
I didn't even know about the British Institute of Interior Design. I think I came to learn about it after, when I was in industry. So it would be good for them to kind of incorporate that into the learning when you're in university and learning about, you know, bodies that you can go to as well. I had no idea about it.
Yeah, like that should maybe be sort of seen as the goal, or you know, to be aligned with those bodies, rather than, you know, it being sort of just like a side note that, you know, you can if you want, sort of thing. Like,
and they were, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but they were involved in the that TV show, raising a controversial point, I guess, the Great British Design Challenge.
Oh, were they?
Initially,
yeah,
so,
they were, yeah.
Is it Daniel Hopkins?
But I don't know if that's a very good association, to be honest.
Well, Daniel Hopkins then went on to be the chair of.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
he was. I think he was the head of. I think he was the head of education at the time. So there was a link, but I would have thought that would have been a great opportunity for the BIID to highlight some of the issues that maybe TV shows don't represent particularly accurately about the industry. And I'm not sure how well it did that, to be honest, as a TV.
I really don't feel they're visible enough. They're so under the radar, and they could be so much more.
Yeah, I like I say, I think only interior designers know about them. Like the general public, or like people who would be hiring an interior designer would not give it a second thought to think, oh, is there a governing body that I can check that this person is, you know, accredited with? They just don't, like, it's
well,
not
I mean, even just for interior designers and interior stylists that are out there and maybe need a little bit more guidance and support. You know, I think there's a lot more that the British Institute of Interior Design could be doing to set example,
onboard people. And absolutely.
I think it could be so much more visible. I mean, if you check their Instagram, there's tumbleweed, you know. With regards, I think the side hustle culture, in addition to how we live nowadays, the fast-paced world that we're living in, has had a massive impact on so many businesses, but especially interior design. And I have noticed the cutting corners thing from my own perspective when I'm delivering courses and training people. There's always this, it happens a lot where there's always this need to cut down on the length of time something takes. And I never have a problem with that, because that's just smart, as long as it doesn't compromise the end result. But I see it so often that people are cutting corners, people as in interior designers or interior design students, they're cutting corners so much that it is actually compromising on the end result and the quality. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you deal with that? How can we try to change that? Is it possible to change that? Because I do feel, just from the outside looking in to the things that are being produced, again, I'm coming from a presentation point of view, you know, you'll be coming from the actual process, but you know, that's where I'm seeing the impact. And this is where things start becoming a little bit, this is where perceptions start becoming a little bit skewed as well, because, for example, the faux 3D mood boards, that has become like an industry standard.
Yeah, you even see it in interior design magazines now, which is really
and
interesting site.
It's all over Instagram, it's all over Pinterest. Some people refer to them as 3D. They're not, but that's like an industry standard. And I'm like, why? Like, so now it's like, you know, if you're going to go out in interior design and you're a student, that's the expectation, that's the standard you're going to set yourself.
Yeah.
How do we change that?
That's the thing. I think that's really difficult. And I've seen this happen in like other creative industries, because prior to interior design, I was in fashion industry and I saw this happening there. And yeah, like with makeup and things like that, for example, there were makeup artists, like, you know, when all of these vloggers were doing all this stuff, and like there were makeup artists I would work with who would like point blank refuse to do contouring. They were like, not doing it, not doing that. And now that's the standard. That's what you know, that's like, if you would just be on set and refuse to do that today, you're not getting hired again. So I think that's kind of what's happening here as well. It's sort of like, the industry is being saturated with this sort of shoddy work, or like shoddy kind of presentation skills, and like these cut corners, and that is sort of quietly and insidiously becoming industry standard.
But you know what? This is where I'm like, you know, you can turn that to your advantage by saying, but you know what? I'm not going to do that. I am going to make myself stand out a little bit more. I'm going to separate myself from that culture, and I'm going to do this. And that's what I try to promote an awful lot. That's what I'm trying to encourage people to do. Don't do that. Don't do what everyone else is doing, especially when it is saturated. Like social media, you know, as a consumer, every day you are bombarded with all of this information. You know, businesses are trying to get your attention. And in my mind, one of the best ways to stand out is through quality, is through doing something a little bit different, you know, instead of all the same things that are being pushed within, especially online with regards to interior design at the minute.
As designers, we just need to be a bit more realistic with our time. I know that obviously nowadays everything happens so fast, but really we just need to take a step back and be like, actually, I can't get that done quickly if I'm going to produce it to the best of my ability, and just not give into it, because everything doesn't need to happen now instantly. You know, good things do take time. And if that is, you know, having to wait a week for a mood board because you want to order the right samples and you want to make sure that everything's right and you want to have time to, you know, set everything up and photograph it, then just do that instead of, you know, getting everything on Photoshop, taking a picture from here, taking a picture of there. And it does show your quality, and as well, you're being authentic. You're not just producing things to get them out quickly.
So yeah, you feel sorry, go ahead, Portia.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, I agree that we should sort of like, you know, stand our ground in a sense and like remain, you know, keep that integrity to what we're doing. It is just sort of obviously frustrating, and like it's a shame that there is always going to be somebody who's going to come in and say, well, I can do that in 2 days, or I can, you know, I can do that at half the price. And it is kind of like not getting sucked into that and not getting not being swayed by that. And I think it can be quite difficult because you can feel sort of like, is everyone going to just pass me by because they think I take too long or cost too much?
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of having the confidence to sort of say, no, we are going to do it properly.
And I think you've got to remember that every aspect of, you know, running a home takes time. I mean, you know, you want to get your gutters cleaned, you phone up a gutter cleaning company, they're not going to pop up that afternoon and clean your gutters for you. You're probably going to have to wait a couple of weeks. So why do we think that we need to sort of, you know, respond to this now thing, when actually what we're doing is going to last potentially for decades?
Yeah.
So you feel, I'm going to say you, I mean, all of you guys, so you feel that there's a re-education that needs to take place, especially with regards to your target audiences. And this is kind of hitting on what I had said earlier about taking up your space. So yes, there does appear to be a lot of cut price, pared down services being offered. And there's obviously a compromise and a sacrifice being made there. And so in order to try to address that, it's important then for interior designers to make sure that they're managing expectations, setting expectations, re-educating, taking up their space, making themselves known, especially online, so that with regards to the area that they're working in and the service that they're providing, that they're making, you know, they're educating people about that and making sure that the expectations are realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the conversation I had with you as well, Anita, where we were saying that, you know, these bloggers just get content out so quickly. And I'm sitting here on my Instagram and I haven't posted in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, I don't even have time. Like, it will take me a few hours to get some sort of mood board to put together. How can they be posting 3-4 different pictures a day? And
you know what, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how, like, see, with regards to YouTube, I'm supposed to be posting a YouTube video once a week. Apparently when it comes to traction and the algorithm and trying to get the visibility increased, you're supposed to post a YouTube video at least once a week. I'm supposed to be posting on Instagram every day. I'm supposed to be doing my stories every day. I'm supposed to be writing a blog post once a month. I'm dipping into the Facebook group. Now, I'm not doing this all the time. I can't do it. I just physically can't do it. But then you're looking at the bloggers and they're doing like 3 YouTube videos a week. And I'm like, What?
Yeah, it's just content.
It is difficult.
Find the time to actually get your work done.
Yep,
that's the thing, and I was sort of talking to a friend about this recently. Is that like now it does feel like we live in a time where no matter what your job is, that's not actually your job. Your job is you are a media company first, and then your job second. So your primary job is actually content and telling people about your job. That's your first job. Your second job is actually doing your job. And it's like this really hard pill to swallow. For me, I'm not like a natural when it comes to social media at all. Like
we're a natural at the minute, Portia, on this video.
But I really struggle with like, you know, thinking of things to post on my Instagram or like trying to dredge up like content. But it does feel like
we can do a podcast about that. We can do a podcast about that later.
Enough.
Yeah.
But you know what? Quality content, we're going off on a tangent, but it's okay. Quality content is difficult to think of because you're trying to make it specific and valuable, but it can be done, and there's a process to do that, and you can only do that if you know your audience really well, and you speak to them and you ask them for feedback and you ask them questions, and the minute you start talking to them and you get a better idea of what they want, what they're interested in, who they speak to, the websites that they're looking at, the people that they follow, you start getting that information and you start, you know, you can do it. You can definitely do it. But the problem is it's time consuming. It really is time consuming. Like I did a couple of stories on my Instagram a couple of nights ago. Whose dog is that?
It's Bubbles. Hold on.
Yeah, I did a couple of stories a couple of nights ago about the color wheel video that I did and how I distributed that. And it took a couple of hours. Yeah. And it's something that I have to do every single time I create content, because if I'm not going to distribute it properly, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? And those of you in the Facebook group will know that I asked initially, I put the feelers out first. Do you guys still create color wheels? You know, and they're like, yes, girl, yes. And then
but interestingly, one person said no, they didn't have to do it as part of their course.
Yeah. I wonder what course that was. Yeah.
But sort of looping back to this issue about how people can focus on one.
Yes, Nadia, get us back to the subject at hand.
Do that. I think there isn't a tendency for younger designers to really think they have to do everything. And if they're not earning that much money yet, they have to kind of save money in inverted commas by doing everything themselves. And I think that can be a really false economy, both in terms of the amount of money they're able to generate themselves
and the standard as well,
and the standards, because they can't focus on their core competencies. If you're not very good at web designing, as soon as you've got any kind of income, get somebody else doing your website or you know, doing your accounting or whatever it is, because actually the amount of time you're going to spend on doing your accounts is going to be 10 times as long as an accountant's going to spend, and that's, you know, however many hours that you can't then bill. And you're going to pay an accountant less than I think than you would be charging for your interior design services.
I think it's partly true. I don't always think it's always about trying to save money. I think, although that is part of it, just as a business person myself, you know, like I've built my entire website for SketchUp Hub because I just didn't want to pay someone $2,000 to do. I'm like, no, I want that money. No, I need a coffee table. But I think it's also about the whole side hustle culture and the you know, the getting things done quickly and now.
I think that is like, I think we do, like we believe like we can do anything, like we can wear all the hats, we can have it all, and like that's sort of what we're sort of taught now.
It is a false economy though, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because it's sort of like, how much do you value your time? Like Nadia was saying, you can sit there for 5 hours doing something that you could pay someone to do in 2 hours and spend the other 3 hours doing your job and making more money than you would, you know. So it does come down to sort of like, how much do you value your time, and where's your time best spent?
By those interior designers who look as though they are cutting corners and perhaps making a good living of providing substandard service, whether it's online or in person. It's more difficult to observe the in-person aspect of it because it's more obvious when it's online and you can see the things that are being produced. Do you feel threatened by that? How do you cope with that just daily, even from a business point of view when it comes to like, because, you know, like at the end of the day, we're doing this to make money, you know, it's a business, you know, there's profit margins. And so how do you feel just as someone who, like you guys who are working as professionals?
I think I find it galling, but I don't worry too much about it because I think everyone finds their level. And somebody said to me fairly early on in my career, you know, do you want to be a wedding singer or do you want to be a rock star? You know, you're never going to be a rock star if you're always pitching your stuff at that level, and you're always going to get clients that are similar to the clients that you've already had, unless you do something to push yourself and to continue to learn and to continue to grow and develop. So you're either one of those people or you're not, in my opinion. And I almost think there's very little point constantly focusing on you could sort of go mad thinking about the way other people conduct themselves and how other people run their business, when you could do so much better by just focusing that effort back on yourself and just thinking, well, actually, yeah, I can see where that's wrong. I'm not going to do that myself. There's a lesson to be learned from that.
Yeah.
And apply it to your own work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is just about sort of being able to learn from other people's mistakes and learn from other people's sort of pitfalls and other people's you know, where they're not sort of measuring up. You can take from that and sort of feel comfort in the fact that, well, I know that I can actually do that better, or I can do that properly.
Yeah, that's really true. I think
sorry, go ahead, Keegan.
Years that I've been working, I've always been very eager to learn about the business side of things, even though I obviously want to progress my career in interior designer. And I would always reflect and see how, you know, the companies I was working for, how were they running and what are the mistakes they were doing that now as a business owner, I can avoid them and try to do better. So it's all a learning experience as well.
Do you feel too that it's really just about knowing your market, knowing the niche that you want to work in, knowing who your customer is and just completely focusing on that?
I think so, yeah. Like Nadia saying, I really like that phrase that you used, are you a wedding singer or a rock star? Because it's true, isn't it? And if you see yourself as a rock star, you shouldn't waste time comparing yourself to wedding singers because it's not going to get you anywhere. So I think it is about understanding where you want to be and who you want your clients to be and what you want to be doing, and look there and compare yourself there and serve those people. Don't worry about thinking about what these people are doing who aren't doing it to the standard that you see as correct, because it's just going to sort of exhaust you, I think.
Yeah, but then if you do, like we said, take up your space a little bit more and educate a little bit more, then that will have an impact collectively in the industry.
Yeah. It's a weird one because it's sort of like when you see something, and it's funny, I saw something recently. It was
yes, well, we've got some tea. Here we go.
I'm not going to name names. It was an interior designer, I think London-based interior designer, who had received quite a lot of press actually, and this picture of a room that she'd designed was sort of all over the place, and it looked nice, but it looked badly designed. There was a dining table in a space where you'd really struggle to sit at that dining table. It looked really nice, but I was like, people are printing this in publications are latching onto this and great. The first thing I saw when I looked at it was, well, how's anyone going to sit there, or how are you supposed to move past this time? And it was kind of she was, I guess, from what I could see, she was being regarded as a voice of interior design and an authority on interior design. And so it's a weird one, really, because what do? Do you go around policing other designers? And
And you can't use other people's images. So I've got a Pinterest board that's actually a private board, I hope, called Style Over Substance or something like that. And it's where I've pinned stuff exactly like that. So you've got beautiful tables with like really fat pillar legs, and then they've got like 8 chairs around it. It's like, well, how's anyone going to pull their chair up to the table?
Yeah.
The legs are kind of this huge. And then there's another one with a bed where the headboard is actually made out of an array of tennis rackets. And it's like, well, that looks fantastic. But what happens when you try and sit up in bed and your hair gets tangled?
Hello.
I hate things like that.
I would love to do a blog post on this, but I don't.
That sounds awesome.
Territory where you're kind of, using other people's images. So sometimes you have to let it go, but it is really galling.
What else do you think the industry can do moving forward? To put a more positive spin on, more positive and more truthful and more transparent and more realistic spin is the wrong word to use, but interpretation or public perception of an interior designer's role and contribution and the process. Because we're saying at the minute, we're saying at the minute, okay, so this is what they're doing that's having a negative impact. You're doing this, and this. It's setting unrealistic expectations. It's not transparent. You're cutting corners. There's a substandard service, right? So, we did talk about re-educating. And when I say re-educating, I just mean like in general, like the audience that you have on Instagram, or like Instagram for interior designers is huge. Huge. And all of you should be utilizing that and exploiting it 1,000%. And if you're not, girl. And I know that we have an awkward silence right now because it's like, but Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, it's where it's at.
Yeah.
Where it's at, and Facebook, obviously, to a certain extent. But things changed for me, for my business, hugely when I started to exploit Instagram. But that's a different conversation. But so it's like, going forward, how do we try to address it? Is it literally just being more vocal, taking up your space, showing your expertise more?
I think there would need to be tighter regulatory involvement, but obviously that involves the government, and it probably needs a few disasters to happen along the way, in the same way that there have been architectural disasters. I can't really see there being more scope for further regulation unless there's something that prompts that. And like I said, if you haven't got insurance, and a designer can do quite a lot of damage if they don't know what they're doing, or can make choices that could lead to somebody being injured.
Yes.
That's quite big stuff.
Although I have to be honest, it's interesting you said that, because you, Nadia, specialize in period properties and heritage. And that's really interesting, because this is the first time I've ever made this observation. Because I mean, it's showing that they actually that the online services have a little bit of intelligence in that manner, because they would avoid all that kind of thing. Like if you think about it, the online and e-design services, they don't do commercial interiors, hotels, they don't do period properties and heritage. So from that respect, with regards to going forward, it's all about kind of showing the full scope and the full range. It is falling under education again, but that should be give you a lot of encouragement and positivity, because it's showing that there's huge areas of the industry that other interior stylists.
Yeah. On my Instagram, I've put in my little description, difficult is worth doing. And to be fair, I think I got that off a car advert, but that's always the path I've taken in life. I never ever go for the easy option. I go for the right option, hopefully, and sometimes that's not straightforward. So working with period properties is not that straightforward. It has sort of shown me that quick fixes and bodge jobs are not, we don't have the monopoly on them in this decade.
I mean, you have witnessed that. You have witnessed.
Oh, but yeah, I've got 170 years in this house of you know, really weird decisions that go all the way back to 1850.
And to be honest, I would like to see interior designers being more visible online. I know interior designers who are supremely talented, in addition to you guys, and they could eat and over, you know, a lot of the designers that are very visible now, but they don't do it. Now, there's obviously reasons for that. There's going to be
too busy.
Yeah, they're too busy providing, like, you know, top-notch design, but there's a few reasons for that. And I know that there is a confidence and issue with that a lot, and just a lack of understanding of what's required when they put themselves out there. But I think they're doing themselves and the industry such a disservice, because I would love, like, if I was the target audience, I would love nothing more than to watch an interior designer in their habitat, in their studio, and for them to flick through a few fabric books and say, well, you know, if I was going to use this pattern, I would put it with this one, because when you combine patterns and you do this, then it looks like that. And I rarely see that. I rarely see that. And even Nadia there, the queen, when it comes to color palettes, you know, paint swatches, and I would put this color with that, and the reason that goes with that, heritage colors that go, I never see it.
And you know, I think I think part of the reason for that is sometimes some of those skills are quite intuitive. So you do learn color theory, and when I was doing my diploma, it was described as a bit like learning to drive. So when you first learn to drive, you're consciously competent, and then you become unconsciously competent, which is when you're just driving, you're changing gear, you're looking in the mirrors, and it's all just happening, and you get from A to B, and you don't even realize where, you know, the route that you've taken. And I think you get to the point with things like color and pattern and so on, where the process is no longer conscious, and actually to make it conscious again when it's been unconscious,
or you have to go back to basics.
You have to like churn through it and think, well, what was my brain doing when I did that? And that's been time consuming.
But my point is, and yes, it always takes time, but my point is, your audience would find that so valuable. I mean, they would be hanging on every word, because you're the expert. And that's what I'm saying when it comes to the decline in standards, and all these other people who do not even have like an ounce of the expertise and knowledge that you have. You need to take up your space. You need to be like nudging and moving people out of the way and be like, hey, you know, I know what the crack is here. Crack, that's just like a local saying. You know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I feel like sometimes, especially with me, because I'm quite a new designer, I get like an imposter syndrome where I'm so scared to put myself out there.
You has hit on something massive. That's a massive subject.
I just felt like, oh my God, am I saying the right things? Even though, like, I've been doing this for 5 years, like I know what I'm doing. Just getting myself out there is just such like a scary experience that, you know, if you're with a client and I know that it's just me and the client in the room, and, you know, I know what I'm saying, but putting yourself in camera and having, you know, being able so many people to see you is just, I think that's what puts me off more than anything. So I will catch other Instagrammers and bloggers just saying things. I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like, what you're saying is not correct. But then I'm not putting the right information out there because I'm so scared of having that negative feedback coming in.
I think everyone has imposter syndrome, and that's where it comes back to what Anita was saying, when you're looking at people doing these, say, mood boards that are kind of 3D visuals, but they're not really, they're like cut and paste. And, you know, you're just looking about poor quality presentation. And actually, I found that really reassuring for me many times, because when things have been difficult for me with my sort of self-esteem or whatever, I'm looking at that thinking, actually, I'm really good at this. I know I wouldn't put that out there. I know I would do that better. You know, and I think
that's the outlook I need instead.
I think you need to focus on. I think we all have a tendency to have the glossy design books on our coffee tables and look at the really, really high end of interior design where people have, you know, millions and millions of pound budgets and unlimited access to the most amazing suppliers. And that can be really demoralizing for a designer who's never going to work with clients like that. But therefore, you know, look at designers that are operating with the kind of clients you're operating with, on the kind of projects you're operating with, and the sort of size of business that you're operating at. And then I think you'll probably see that you're doing a really good job, unless you're one of the people that's not maintaining standards.
And then you don't care.
Doesn't apply to anyone here, obviously.
Well, like, I mean, I know these issues are never cut and dry. You know, they're not going to be dealt with overnight, or, you know, I mean, they're going to be here for a while, especially with regards to online services and the digital aspect of things, because that's here to stay for, you know, I mean, I know that that kind of arena, the Facebook, social media, especially in the last 5 years, has just exploded, and we're still learning. I mean, in general, it's what, like 10 years old, 12 years old. It's still so new. And that's why I say, like, it's not going to go anywhere soon, but I do feel it's going to evolve and be pared down and be much more regulated going forward, which is good for everyone. But just to kind of conclude our conversation today, unless anyone else had something that they wanted to add, I think there is an agreement that there is a perceived decline in standard. We have been pretty thorough with regards to why we think that is. And I do feel going forward that there's more that could be done in the academia to bring more kind of realistic expectations to what's involved with regards to interior design, make it more relevant. The industry bodies could be so much more visible and more encouraging, and set an example visibly out in public for, you know, the entire audience and industry, not just for paying members. And I think the interior designers need to take more responsibility too, collectively, with regards to taking up their space as well. But as I said, it's not something that, you know, that takes time, and there's so many different reasons why those things aren't happening. But I think even just having the conversation and saying these things out loud, because the amount of people, when I said I was going to do this podcast, the amount of people that contacted me with messages saying, yes, you know, and instantly they had the opinions, everything that we said today. So I think even just getting it out there and asking people to get involved in discussion and engaging about it, it's a good start. To me, it's a good positive start. So thank you so much for all of you. Like, I'm not going to end here. I'm going to thank you to end the podcast. Okay. So thank you so much for taking part today. I really appreciate it. You've mentioned, I mean, you said some excellent things, and it's very obvious that you're all very skilled and, you know, have wonderful expertise in your own areas. I mean, it comes across, and that's what I want. You know, it's really kind of, you know, meaningful debate. And I really hope to see you in future podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, that's it. So we could just chat now. Okay, I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to do that to get that out of the way. Okay.